Florida is becoming ground zero for the culture wars Republicans are waging and a sign of what we might expect from the National Party. Erasing history, banning books, anti-gay bills, gas stoves, and you cannot possibly make this up, tracking menstrual cycles of student athletes. Our Friday Nightcap panel is here to discuss all of it with me. My friend Jelani Cobb, Dean of the Columbia Journalism School. He's also a staff writer for The New Yorker and MSNBC political contributor. My dear friend John Hope Bryant, founder and chairman of Operation Hope. Actress and comedian Judy Gold. Her upcoming show will be here in New York City starting in March. It's based on her book. Yes, I can say that. When they come for the comedians, we are all in trouble. And Sami Sage, co-founder of the incredibly popular millennial media company, Betches. Judy, I start with you first. I don't even know what to say about Florida.
I don't even, what is going on there? First of all, the menstrual, I'm speechless that you would, you've taken away Roe v. Wade, and now you are telling female athletes that they have to report their menstrual flows. Do they have the boys report when their testicles drop? I mean, I don't understand.
I didn't hit puberty until I was 17. Does that mean I was going to have to sit on the asexual bench for all my cheerleading? How's that going to work?
Yeah, some girls don't even get their periods because they're athletic, and it is mind-boggling. Less government, but you cannot control your body or keep private your medical history. How
serious are you taking all of this, Jelani? You're a professor. Do you think this is going to impact, for example, this book banning, what our kids are actually learning? Or do you think it's all a big show for theatrics?
So, I think that, there's a political theater aspect of it. Clearly, people are doing things like the gas stove stuff. They're trying to find hot button things where a person, some curmudgeonly person is sitting in their living room going, yeah, the Democrats want to come in and rip your stove out of the wall. And that part of it is kind of ridiculous. But in reality, this does have a chilling effect. When I'm talking with faculty, I've talked with deans, I've talked with people in higher education, and they're talking about the very real sense of intimidation that people have. Maybe they think twice about whether they want to teach at the University of Florida. Maybe they think twice about whether they want to host academic events there. I mean, it really does have an impact on the prestige of the state and certainly the prestige of the state's institutions of higher education.
John, last night on this network, Stephen A. Smith said, Ron DeSantis, I might agree with him on a whole lot of policies, but I'm going to stop at him dictating African-American studies in any state, in any school in this country. What do you think?
I think that he's completely right about that, and America needs to be right about this. You cannot decide which part of the history you want to learn about. All of our history is rich and important. This is 1960 all over again. This is 1865 all over again, where we're stoking fears, deciding we are separate. The Bible says a house divided cannot stand. Supposedly, this party is about this higher idea. Well, let's go right to the Bible. We're only better together. And a saint is a sinner that got up. We're all angels with dirty faces. Right? You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. So it is our complicated history, like a family, that actually makes us better. And who loves all this, Stephanie? It's China. China and Russia loves that we're in a food fight because a house divided cannot stand. They want to take our position in the world. We're really at war. Sorry, they're at war with us. They want our station in life, and we're helping them. So while on the small stage, this, I guess, helps them with the theatrics of politics. It separates, divides, stokes fears, and allows people to be comfortable. But you're actually doing your kids a disadvantage not to have the whole history of how this country was built, because it was built for free. It was built for free by my ancestors. My great-grandfather was a slave. My great-great-grandmother was a slave. Me knowing that history and still not hating anybody as a result of it makes me better and makes me love my brother and sister more.
Sami, all of these culture wars, what they're also doing is taking lawmakers away from focusing on real issues that impact millions of Americans. Where do younger voters, and I realize they don't vote as a monolith, but where do they come out on all this?
I mean, I think younger voters just see that this is completely ridiculous. It is political theater. And I think that they're aware that this is a dress rehearsal for what a potential President DeSantis could want to make America look like. And I think that, I mean, you look at the voter data from the midterm elections, and young people went pretty much across the board for Democrats. And I think that that's a trend that's not going to go away, because especially when the Republican Party and Florida sort of the eye of the storm there, when you see the way that they're behaving and the things that they choose to take up as issues, no one feels that that is something that is going to benefit them or their future or the climate or really anyone as a society other than, you know, the most powerful and wealthy and white.
Well, here's the thing. Florida does not have a lock on absurdity. Long Island, your district, New York does as well. Today, George Santos delivered yet again his latest fabrication that he produced the Broadway adaptation of Spider-Man, which I don't even understand. I mean, like, if you're going to pick it, choose a show that didn't flop. Go with Hamilton, right? Go with Rent. But no. And my own colleague, John Allen, said something really disturbing about all of this last week. He said, this country right now is short on shame.
Oh, yeah.
Short on shame. What's the impact of that? Can we get it back? Do we want to get it back?
Yeah, of course we want to get it back. I mean, so what happens is this, right? On the one hand, again, there's like the kind of absurdist element of this. I produced Spider-Man. It's just kind of stream of consciousness association. And also, like, Spider-Man is just notable enough that people know it existed, but people don't know anything about it. Like, maybe you did produce Spider-Man. But realistically, what it does is corrode people's faith in institutions. And when we look at the loss of trust, you know, across the board, there were years where people could get away with cynical behavior after cynical behavior. They thought that the public were just these kind of bovine rubes who would never figure things out. And now they don't believe you. They don't believe you about anything, even when it's really important. They don't believe you about the efficacy of vaccines. Of the COVID vaccines, or they don't believe you about, you know, climate change or things that we really want people to invest in. And so, yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, you didn't produce Spider-Man, you didn't, you know, any of the other things you said on your resume.
But no one calls him, like, none of the Republicans call him out. You know,
Because
McCarthy needs his, but it's the truth. Like, that's what I don't understand. Do you have any dignity at all? Do you have any respect for your constituents? That you would allow this liar, this blatant liar, who's admitted to lying, who has different names. 80% of his constituents don't want him there. And sorry, I need your vote. I need your vote. I mean, we have, as a kid, you know, even if years ago you weren't on the side of the president. You didn't like the president. You still called him Mr. President. You still were respectful of that office. And there's no respect at all.
But Judy, is that really that different than the majority of the public that wants gun reform? Doesn't happen. Majority of the public that wants family leave doesn't happen. Majority of the public that gets behind really kind of simple brass tacks things that will improve their lives, they don't happen.
Because they stoke fear. That's the only way they can get ahead. And they should take their little AR-15 pins off and put little gas stoves on there. Okay?
Sam, you live in Long Island. What do his actual constituents think?
I mean,
They think you should run?
They do. I mean, the question is Santos still going to be in this position in 2024? I mean, at least in that case, they would probably be picking up a Democratic seat. But the truth is that Santos purposely chose to create this particular biography because he understood the demographic of the district. He understood that the district was sort of the birth story, the birthplace of socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And that is that's the bio that he created. There are a lot of Jews in the district. He purposely chose this, you know, Holocaust ancestry that is not true and is deeply insulting.
Yeah.
Right, Jewish. Yes. But I mean, honestly, I don't think this is that different from what we were watching from Donald Trump for the past 4 years.
Yes.
Yes, maybe he's more like ridiculous and made up, but the fact that we're just hearing lie after lie with no respect for the truth, and now he's just able to kind of continue on without any sort of real accountability. I don't think that could have happened if we didn't just have the past 6 years of what we experienced.
John?
You know, I've served 3 presidents from both parties, so this comment's not partisan. But President Bill Clinton, who I think is brilliant with these statements, says it's hard to get somebody to agree to the truth when the lie is paying their paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the answer to your question. At the end of the day, this comes down to money, power, position, and when to keep it. And it's convenient for certain parties, certain people to not hold them accountable. But
It's convenient right now, in the short term, in the moment.
But if you go far north than the North Pole, you end up south. This party is going to end. What people want is a vision. What people want is a vision. And what did Dr. King say? I'm here to redeem the soul of America from the triple evils of war, racism, and poverty. That hits you here, that hits you here. And that's really what people sort of got around. That's why people still keep uttering his name today. Right. There are Congress people you can't remember their name from last week, but we still keep uttering his name and Mother Teresa and people who heroes and sheroes that we care about because they spoke to that larger divine nature in all of us. You know, we're really having a family fight, Stephanie. This is really a family fight. We're all one family, and you got Boo Boo and Pookie and them, and you got a drunk cousin, and this dude is the uncle who did weird things to kids, and you don't want to around your niece alone.
There you go.
But he's still related to you. So we got to find a way to disagree without being disagreeable here. We got to find a way to even leave our adversary with their dignity. Because if you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. This guy should not be in office. If he applied for this network, you'd have fired him once you found out he lied. If he applied for Operation Hope, he would have been fired if we found out he lied. What if he's a surgeon and he's lying on his credentials? Like, knock it off. We need to knock it off, and everybody needs to say, for the sake of the party, their party, he needs to go.
So, I mean, I think that's great. But one of the things that's really troubling to me is that there are a lot of people, I don't think it's a majority, but a very potent, dangerous minority of people who don't believe that we are a family. In fact, they believe that we are outsiders who are threats to their families.
I understand.
And that's when we look at the kind of militarized violence of people wanting to harm Nancy Pelosi's husband, or wanting to harm Nancy Pelosi. Like, I think that we have to be very real about what we saw on January 6th, about what we saw in Charlottesville. You know, there are people who are mobilized by this idea that people like you, people like me, people around this table represent an existential threat to their reality, to what America is supposed to be. And I think that when we get down to like the base level, that's really what we have to be concerned about.